A botanist named Alara arrives at the cursed Ravenwood estate to study its mysterious roses, only to uncover a haunting love story bound by blood, betrayal, and magic where every bloom demands a sacrifice, and love may be the only key to breaking the curse.
Alara's boots crunched softly against the gravel path as she pushed open the wrought iron gates of Ravenwood. The estate loomed before her, a sprawling mansion draped in ivy, its windows reflecting the waning light of the late afternoon sun. Yet it was not the house that held her attention, but the garden beyond, bursting with roses of every conceivable color and shade. Their scent was intoxicating, thick and heady, but beneath it lingered an undercurrent of something less pleasant, a subtle metallic tang that prickled at the back of her throat. She swallowed hard, her sharp green eyes scanning the surroundings. The villagers had been tight-lipped, their warnings wrapped in half-formed stories about lovers who had vanished among these very roses each summer. Alara's scientific mind dismissed superstition, yet the weight of those whispered tales settled on her like a persistent shadow. Her fingers brushed the leather strap of her satchel, feeling the reassuring presence of her notebooks and tools inside. She was here to study the rare rose variants that had reportedly thrived only in Ravenwood's soil. But something deeper called to her, a need to understand the strange legacy entwined with these blooms. As she ventured further down the winding path, the garden's colors grew richer, petals shimmering with dew despite the dry air. Suddenly, movement caught her eye. There, tending to a cluster of deep crimson roses, was a man. He moved with a quiet reverence, the careful way he pruned the stems speaking of a deep connection to this place. Rowan's messy auburn hair fell in soft waves around his face, and his piercing blue eyes met hers briefly before flicking away. He was tall and strong, his earth-toned clothes blending almost seamlessly with the garden's hues. There was an intensity in his gaze, as if he bore the weight of secrets too heavy to share. Alara felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, curiosity, perhaps, or the faintest stir of attraction. She cleared her throat, stepping closer. "I'm Alara," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "I've come to study the roses here." He nodded, offering a brief, guarded smile. "Rowan, welcome to Ravenwood." Their conversation was tentative, filled with pauses and unspoken questions. Rowan's restraint only deepened the mystique surrounding him, and Alara found herself drawn into the strange magnetism of the garden and its enigmatic caretaker. Nearby, the faint murmur of villagers drifted on the breeze. Their eyes were wary, their whispers laced with fear and old grief. Alara overheard fragment stories of lovers lost, of petals turning to ash, of a curse that clung to the roses like thorns. But the botanist in her refused to be swayed by superstition. She set up her equipment near an ancient stone bench, jotting down observations as the sun dipped lower. The roses' colors deepened, glowing with an almost supernatural vibrancy that both thrilled and unsettled her. As twilight shrouded the garden, a cool breeze stirred the petals, carrying with it a chorus of whispered voices that seemed to echo from the very earth beneath her feet. Alara's heart quickened. The garden was alive, and it had stories to tell, stories of love, loss, and a darkness that stretched back through generations. Rowan appeared once more in the fading light, his eyes reflecting the roses' deep hues. He offered her a glance that was part warning, part invitation, before disappearing into the shadows of the garden, leaving Alara alone beneath the blooming thorns. The night was just beginning, and so was her journey into the heart of Ravenwood's mysteries. The morning light filtered through the mist like a silken veil as Alara stepped carefully between the rows of roses. Each bloom was more vibrant than any she had seen before, petals unfolding in impossible hues, deep crimsons that seemed to drink in the sunlight, blushing pinks that whispered of secrets, and ghostly whites that shimmered faintly in the cool dawn. The air was thick with their scent, sweet and intoxicating, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of something darker, something unsettled. Around her, the garden was alive yet silent, as if holding its breath. Alara's fingers brushed over the thorned stems, careful not to prick herself, as she took meticulous notes in her weathered journal. The roses here did not behave like ordinary flowers. Their growth patterns defied known horticultural science, their petals occasionally quivering as if stirred by an unseen breath. A shiver ran down her spine, a mixture of fascination and unease. She spoke softly to the plants, a habit she had long kept, as if her voice could coax the garden's secrets out. Her footsteps led her toward the estate's edge, where the village of Ravenwood lay tucked beneath a canopy of ancient trees. The houses were worn but sturdy, with ivy crawling up their stone walls and smoke curling from chimneys in lazy spirals. As Alara approached the small square, she noticed the wary glances of villagers pausing their daily chores to watch her. Their eyes held stories, some curious, others wary, many haunted. She greeted a woman washing clothes by the well, whose smile was polite but tight. "You renew here," the woman said with a hint of caution. "The garden's beauty is a curse, they say. Lovers go in, but some never come back when summer blooms peak." Alara frowned but kept her tone gentle. "Is it just a story?" The woman's gaze flicked to the shadows under the trees. "Stories hold more truth than yod, like sometimes. Be careful." Word spread quickly, and before long, Alara found herself surrounded by murmurs of vanished lovers and whispered warnings. The villagers' fear was palpable, a living thread woven into the fabric of the town. Yet amidst the caution, a few eyes held a spark of something else, hope, or perhaps defiance. It was Mara who finally drew Alara into the heart of the mystery. The herbalist's cottage was a world apart from the village, a sanctuary of earth and flame, where dried herbs hung from the rafters, and the scent of lavender and rosemary softened the air. Mara welcomed Alara with a warm smile, her silver hair catching the light like woven moonbeams. "You seek answers," Mara said softly, motioning for Alara to sit by the hearth. "But answers come at a cost. The roses hold memories, pain, and promises long broken." Alara leaned forward eagerly. "What do you mean?" Mara's eyes darkened with the weight of knowledge. Long ago, a love so fierce it defied all bounds was betrayed. The garden was born from that anguish, a curse to bind hearts and punish those who dare to love within its walls. Each rose is a fragment of that sorrow. A silence fell between them, thick and potent. Alara's scientific mind wrestled with the impossible, yet every fiber of her being sensed the truth carried in Mara's words. She felt the garden's pulse alive, watchful and waiting. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting dappled light through the trees. Alara's thoughts were interrupted by movement. Rowan appeared at the edge of the clearing, his auburn hair tousled, eyes sharp and unreadable. He approached with measured steps, hands stained from tending the earth. "You shouldn't linger too long," he said quietly, voice low but edged with concern. "The garden doesn't take kindly to strangers meddling in its affairs." Alara met his gaze, sensing the layers of pain and protection beneath his calm exterior. "I'm here to understand," she replied steadily, "to find the truth behind the roses." Rowan's eyes flickered with something almost like gratitude. "Be careful what you seek, some truths come wrapped in thorns." Their exchange was brief but charged, a silent promise hovering between them. As Rowan turned back toward the garden, Alara's heart thrummed with a mix of anticipation and dread. The roses bloomed around them, beautiful and dangerous, whispering secrets only she was beginning to hear. As evening fell, Alara returned to her room, the scent of roses lingering in the air. Her journal lay open, pages filled with observations and questions, but also the beginnings of a new kind of inquiry, one that reached beyond science into the realm of the unknown. Outside her window, the garden was alive with shadows and whispers, a world waiting for her to uncover its deepest mysteries. And somewhere, beneath the thorns and petals, a story as old as the garden itself was stirring, one that would test the limits of love, trust, and sacrifice. Alara stepped deeper into the heart of the rose garden, the soil beneath her feet soft and springy from recent rains. The air was saturated with the heady scent of blossoming roses, crimson, ivory, and blush-pink petals unfurling under the summer sun. She knelt beside a cluster of unusually vibrant blooms, their petals almost luminescent, radiating a warmth that contradicted the cool morning air. Her gloved fingers brushed gently across the velvety surfaces, noting the subtle pulse of life beneath, a rhythm that seemed almost alive beyond natural explanation. She frowned, flipping open her notebook, the pen poised to capture every anomaly. Yet, the more she observed, the less her scientific theories seemed to apply. This garden harbored secrets that defied logic. A soft rustle behind her drew her attention. Rowan stood nearby, his piercing blue eyes watching her with a mixture of caution and something softer concern. His auburn hair was tousled by the breeze, and the earth tones of his clothes blended seamlessly with the garden's rich hues. "You are not like the others," he said quietly, stepping closer. "You don't run away when the roses bloom." Alara met his gaze, a flicker of challenge in her sharp green eyes. "I want to understand. That's why I'm here." For a moment, Rowan said nothing. Then, gesturing toward a shaded arbor draped in deep red roses, he invited her to sit with him. They settled beneath the canopy, where the sunlight filtered through the petals, casting dappled patterns that danced gently across their faces. The garden was alive with the quiet hum of bees and the distant chirping of birds, a serene backdrop to the tension simmering between them. "This garden," Rowan began, his voice low and steady, "has been a place of beauty and tragedy for generations. My family has tended these roses for centuries, always guarding a secret no one else dared to speak aloud." Alara listened intently, her scientific curiosity piqued despite her instincts warning caution. "A curse?" she asked, hesitant but unable to suppress the question. He nodded slowly, eyes clouded with memories. "An ancient sacrifice bound to the bloodline of the original gardener. Each summer, when the roses bloom fullest, lovers who enter this garden vanish without a trace." The words hung heavy between them, the scent of the roses suddenly sharp, almost suffocating. Alara's mind raced to find rational explanations: mass hysteria, environmental toxins, psychological phenomena, but none fit the chilling consistency of the disappearances. Her skepticism battled with the undeniable aura of the garden's dark history. "Why tell me this now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Because you read different," Rowan replied, his gaze steady. "You ask questions, you see beyond the surface, and because I believe you might be the one to end it." A shiver ran down Alara's spine, equal parts fear and fascination. Her heart pounded not just from the weight of Rowan's revelation, but from the fragile trust building between them. She realized that this garden, with all its beauty and menace, had begun to weave them into its story. As the afternoon waned, shadows lengthened across the garden paths. Alara and Rowan shared fragments of their pasts, her loss of a childhood friend to a mysterious disappearance. His burden of safeguard earning a legacy steeped in pain and sacrifice. Each revelation peeled back layers of guardedness, revealing vulnerable humanity beneath. The distant rumble of thunder echoed, and a cool breeze stirred the roses, their petals trembling as if whispering secrets. Alara glanced around, the garden seeming to pulse with a life of its own, both enchanting and ominous. "I want to believe," she admitted, "but how do you live with this curse? With the knowledge that it could claim anyone you love?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "I don't live with it, I survive. But with you here, maybe there's a chance for something different." The garden around them seemed to respond, the colors of the roses deepening, their fragrance intensifying. A fragile hope blossomed in the space between them, tempered by the shadow of the curse that loomed over Ravenwood. As twilight approached, Alara stood, determination settling in her bones. She would uncover the truth no matter where it led. But as she looked back at Rowan, she knew this journey would bind their fates together in ways neither could yet comprehend. The roses continued to bloom, their beauty both a promise and a warning, and the secrets of Ravenwood were just beginning to come to light. The caretaker's shed was a small, shadowed sanctuary nestled at the edge of the rose garden, its weathered wooden walls steeped in decades of whispered secrets. The air inside was thick with dust motes dancing lazily in the pale shafts of afternoon light that filtered through the grimy windows. Alara stepped cautiously into the cramped space, the soles of her boots creaking softly on the creaking floorboards. She was greeted by the sight of Old Thumb, the garden's aged caretaker, hunched over a cluttered desk piled high with yellowed papers and brittle journals. He looked up as she entered, his face etched with lines carved by time and worry. "You must be Alara," he said in a gravelly voice, pushing back his graying hair. "I've been expecting you." Alara nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. "I'm grateful you agreed to meet with me, Thumb. I need to understand this garden, its history, the disappearances." Thumb gestured toward the desk. "Here, take a look. These are the records I've kept, accounts from long before my time, passed down through the family who tended these grounds." Alara leaned in, the musty smell of old paper filling her senses as she opened a leather-bound journal. The faded ink chronicled a chilling pattern: lovers who had wandered into the rose garden during summer, only to vanish without a trace. Each entry was a delicate thread in a tapestry of loss and lingering sorrow. "Why has no one tried to stop this?" Alara whispered, tracing a fragile line of script. Thumb's eyes darkened, because no one truly knows what lies at the heart of the curse. Many have tried, but the garden holds its secrets close, and it demands a price. The silence between them was broken by the sudden arrival of footsteps pounding against the gravel outside. The shed door burst open, revealing Nathan, Alara's childhood friend, his brow furrowed with urgency.
"Alara!"
he exclaimed, rushing inside. "You have to leave. Now, this place, it's not safe. The curse, it's real. I've heard the stories, seen the fear in the villagers' eyes. You don't belong here." Alara met his gaze steadily, her heart pounding in conflict. "I can't run from this, Nathan. Not when I'm so close to understanding the truth." He grabbed her arm, his grip firm but desperate. "Please, just listen to me. I don't want to lose you too." The weight of his worry pressed on her, but so did the pull of the garden's dark mystery and Rowan. She thought of the gardener's descendant, his quiet strength beneath the blooming roses, the way his blue eyes held unspoken pain. The connection she felt to him, fragile yet fierce, was a tether she couldn't ignore. As Nathan's words echoed, Alara's resolve crystallized. She would stay. She needed to see this through, to face whatever shadows lurked in the garden's depths, for the sake of the lovers lost, for Rowan, and for herself. Later, beneath the canopy of crimson and ivory petals, Rowan appeared silently at her side. He tended to a thorny stem with gentle hands, the scent of roses thick in the air. Their eyes met, and in the silence between them, a quiet understanding blossomed, a promise to face the darkness together. When twilight draped the garden in dusky hues, Alara stood alone at its edge, the cool air brushing her skin as whispers seemed to rise from the earth itself. The roses, so beautiful yet sinister, shimmered faintly in the fading light. She took a deep breath, the chill of fear mingling with the fire of determination. The garden's shadow was long, and the night ahead promised secrets and sacrifice. But Alara's heart beat steady for the first time. She felt ready to confront the curse that had haunted Ravenwood for generations. As the last light slipped away, a distant rustle stirred among the thorns, and Alara knew her journey was only beginning. The morning sun filtered gently through the canopy of towering oaks as Alara made her way toward the heart of Ravenwood's rose garden. Dew still clung to the petals and leaves, sparkling like scattered diamonds in the soft light. The air was thick with the intoxicating scent of blooming roses, a rich, heady perfume that both comforted and unsettled her. Today was the day she'd promised herself to get closer to the source of the garden's mysteries, and perhaps to the man who tended it so carefully. Rowan was already at work when she arrived, his strong frame silhouetted against the vibrant reds, pinks, and whites of the flowering bushes. He wore his usual earth-toned clothes, sleeves rolled up, hands steady as he pruned away withered stems and coaxed life from the thorny branches. His auburn hair was tousled from the morning breeze, and his piercing blue eyes briefly met hers with an unreadable expression. "I didn't expect you so early," he said, his voice low but not unwelcoming. Alara smiled, brushing a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear. "I thought I'd help. Might learn a thing or two from the expert." For a moment, Rowan's guarded demeanor softened. "Careful around the thorns. They're sharper than they look." Together, they moved through the rows of roses, Alara's fingers deftly mimicking Rowan's careful pruning. The garden felt alive under their touch, each snip and clip a small act of care and defiance against the curse that clung invisibly to the soil. As the sun climbed higher, Rowan's stories began to spill out, first in fragments, then in quieter, more vulnerable admissions. He spoke of his mother, lost to the garden when the roses bloomed full and bright, her disappearance a wound that never healed. The weight of protecting the garden's secret pressed heavily on him, a burden carried silently for years. Alara listened intently, her scientific mind struggling to reconcile the tangible pain in Rowan's voice with the legends she'd heard whispered by villagers. Could such sorrow truly be entwined with the blooming roses? The garden's magic was no longer just a theory but a living, breathing force she could feel in the air around them. During a pause, a single crimson petal drifted downward, its edges dark and curling like embers. Alara caught it gently, a shiver running through her as she studied the strange discoloration. "There's something more to these roses," she murmured, "something that defies explanation." Rowan nodded, his gaze distant. "They were beautiful, but they carry a price, one that's been paid in love and loss for generations." Despite the shadows hanging over their conversation, a fragile thread of hope began to weave between them. By afternoon, the garden seemed to glow with a muted light, the roses whispering secrets only they could hear. Alara and Rowan shared small smiles, laughter even, as the weight of fear momentarily lifted. As they rested beneath an ancient archway of blooming vines, Rowan reached out, brushing a stray petal from Alara's cheek. "We're in this together now," he said softly. Alara met his gaze, her heart pounding together. The roses bloomed around them, vibrant and full of promise, yet beneath their petals, the curse waited, patient and relentless. The day's tenderness was a fragile bloom itself, destined to be tested by the darkness that crept ever closer. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Ravenwood in hues of gold and shadow, Alara knew the path ahead was no longer hers alone to walk. With Rowan by her side, she was ready to face whatever the garden demanded, even if it meant risking everything. But the roses had many secrets still, and not all of them would be revealed before the petals fell. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the aged windows of Mara's cottage, casting gentle patterns on the worn wooden floor. Shelves lined with jars of dried herbs and bundles of flowers filled the space with a comforting earthiness, mingling with the faint sweetness of fresh rose petals scattered about. Alara sat opposite Mara, her fingers absently tracing the edges of a yellowed parchment Mara had produced from a faded, leather-bound book. The room was quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the soft rustle of leaves outside. Mara's silver hair shimmered in the light as she spoke, her voice low and steady, weaving a tale that seemed to reach back through centuries. The curse, she began, was not born of malice alone. It was born from heartbreak, betrayal, and a sacrifice that stained the very soil of Ravenwood. My ancestor, a woman named Isolde, was bound to this garden in ways no one truly understands. Alara leaned forward, eyes sharp and alert despite the growing weight of unease settling in her chest. "Isolde?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Mara said, nodding slowly. She loved deeply, but that love was forbidden, tangled in secrets and lies. When betrayal shattered her world, she called upon powers beyond her time, binding the garden with a curse meant to protect and punish all at once. The air in the room seemed to thicken, the scent of roses growing stronger, almost intoxicating. Alara swallowed hard, the scientific part of her mind wrestling with the undeniable presence of something ancient and alive. So the disappearances, she murmured, they're the result of this curse. Mara's gaze was steady, unwavering. Each vanished lover is a thread in an unending tapestry, woven by pain and sacrifice. But there is hope, a way to break free. Alara's heart pounded fiercely. The mystery she had come to solve was no mere legend. It was a living, breathing force that pulsed beneath the surface of the garden's beauty. Later that evening, Alara wandered alone beneath the heavy bloom of the roses, the garden transformed under the silver light of the moon. The flowers seemed to glow faintly, their colors shifting between vibrant reds and shadowed hues that chilled her skin. The whisper of petals brushing against one another sounded like voices, soft, urgent, almost pleading. She paused, eyes wide, feeling the garden's heartbeat in the cool night air. A sudden rustle behind her made her turn. Rowan stepped into the moonlight, his blue eyes reflecting the pale glow. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said quietly. Alara met his gaze, the vulnerability she had glimpsed in Mara's stories mirrored in his expression. "I needed to see," she admitted, "to feel it for myself." He stepped closer, the tension between them palpable. "The garden holds more than beauty. It holds pain, my family's pain," he confessed, voice thick with memories. He reached into his jacket and produced a worn photograph, edges curled and faded. "This was my mother. She disappeared here years ago." Alara took the photo gently, her fingers trembling as she looked at the smiling woman frozen in time. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Rowan swallowed hard, the walls he usually kept around his heart beginning to crumble. "I've carried this burden alone for too long. But with you, maybe there's a chance to end it." Together, they made their way to a secluded part of the garden. Mara had revealed a moss-covered stone altar hidden beneath a canopy of thorny branches and blooming roses. The air hummed with an otherworldly energy, the scent of earth and blossoms thick and potent. Mara's words echoed in Alara's mind, a sacrifice born of love and betrayal, a curse tied to the very roots of the garden. Alara placed her hand on the cold stone, Rowan beside her doing the same. The garden seemed to exhale, the petals around them trembling as if alive. In that moment, the past and present converged, the echoes of long-forgotten sorrow reaching out through the ages. "We have to believe," Rowan said, voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Together. Alara nodded, a fragile hope blooming in her heart. She had come seeking answers, and now faced a choice that went beyond science to embrace the magic, the pain, and the love entwined within Ravenwood's cursed roses. As they stood united before the altar, the garden whispered promises of redemption and sacrifice, of endings and new beginnings. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by danger and loss, but also illuminated by the fragile light of hope. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of the moon and the blooming roses, Alara and Rowan took the first steps toward breaking the cycle, their hearts beating in quiet defiance against the curse that had bound them for generations. The night deepened, and with it, the garden's secrets stirred anew, waiting for the dawn that would decide their fate. The first light of dawn spilled softly over the Ravenwood estate, illuminating the rose garden with a gentle golden hue. Alara stepped carefully along the winding stone path, her boots crunching faintly on the gravel as she moved deeper into the heart of the garden. Around her, the roses were beginning to bloom in earnest, their petals unfurling like delicate silk, vibrant and intoxicating. But there was something unusual about this morning. A strange stillness hung in the air, as if the garden itself was holding its breath. Alara paused beside a cluster of deep crimson roses, brushing her fingers lightly over the velvety petals. The scent was intoxicatingly sweet, but beneath it lay a faint bitterness that made her nose wrinkle. She closed her eyes, breathing in the fragrance, and suddenly the garden seemed to shift. The soft rustle of leaves became a susurrus, like whispered voices fluttering just beyond hearing. She opened her eyes, her heart quickening. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, turning toward the sound. A chill ran down her spine as the wind carried faint, almost imperceptible murmurs through the thorns. The whispers seemed to curl around her,